sim racing in 2024 is bigger than it's ever been, with dozens of great games you can choose from. Whether you enjoy the arcade experience of Need for Speed or the more simulation games of iRacing or ACC, there's a game out there for everyone. However, there's one big obstacle in the way for many budding sim racers: a wheel. Even low-end wheel setups can cost hundreds of dollars, and a really decent one can be well into the thousands. So if you're like me and you're too broke to shell out that kind of money, or you want to wait until you know you're into sim racing enough for it to be worth the cost, you'll most likely be stuck using a controller for the time being. However, there are plenty of games in 2024 that are very playable on a controller, so you can still get your sim racing fix. In this video I'm going to give you some suggestions for which games to play, ranging from more arcade style games like Need for Speed, to more serious sims like Project Cars 2 and Dirt Rally. So hopefully there will be some games out there for you that you can enjoy without having to pay your life savings on a wheel. So starting off at the more arcadey end of racing games, my first recommendation would be any Need for Speed game, but specifically Need for Speed Unbound, given it's the most recent game. Now Unbound's an interesting one. Obviously, being a Need for Speed game, the handling is far more arcadey than really any other game. You know, you've got things like Tapped Drift and Nitrous, none of which you're going to see in any, of the more serious sim racing games. However, Need for Speed Unbound definitely does have some positives. For example, the graphics and art style are really cool, with the cell shading and anime style effects really making the game feel like it's coming to life. The online lobbies for this game are still fairly alive, especially on PC, so if you're looking to play online races against other people, that definitely is an option for Need for Speed. Also, this game is free on Game Pass. The second arcade game that I'd recommend is one that went pretty much under most people's radars when it came out, which is Grid Legends. Now this game definitely handles more towards the arcade side. It's fairly forgiving, pretty easy to drive the cars. However, actually this game has a really good car list. Some of the cars that this game has are things like the classic 90s BTCC cars, as well as anything from GT3 cars all the way to modern LMP race cars. This game also has a mix of real-life circuits and some places that don't exist in the real world. And overall, Grid Legends is a really fun game that I'd highly recommend checking out if you're more into the arcade style of racing games, and it's free on Game Pass. Now the second category of racing games that I'll be suggesting are simcade games, which is kind of a mix between simulation and arcade racing games. The first series that I'm going to recommend, and I'm sure this is no surprise to anyone, is the Forza Horizon series. Now Forza is pretty much known for its controller gameplay, and this game, as well as Forza Motorsport, just plays so well on controller. The controls are so natural and you feel really in control of the car. The Forza Horizon games are still really active, especially on PC, and even in Forza Horizon 4 you can still find online lobbies really easily. The Forza Horizon games are also on Game Pass. Now if rally games are more your thing, I'd definitely recommend trying out Dirt 3. Despite the fact that this game came out almost 13 years ago, it still holds up incredibly well against all other rally games. On PC the graphics still look amazing, and the gameplay is fantastic, especially on a controller. Arguably this game is better on controller than it is on a wheel, and it was definitely designed with controller in mind. Dirt 3 is a great entry point into the unforgiving world of rally games, and a really good stepping stone onto more serious simulators, like the ones that we'll be discussing later on in the list. You can also pick up Dirt 3 really cheap nowadays, and it can pretty much be run on anything. The final category is full-on simulator games. These are games that are pretty hardcore and do take some skill to be able to play on a controller. The first sim game I'm going to recommend is F1 2023. Now, although arguably being designed with a wheel in mind, this game is very playable on controller, and actually given that F1 cars are not too difficult to handle, getting around a track on a controller in this game is not too difficult. There is also a really active online player base for this game, so getting into online lobbies is no problem whatsoever. Once again, this game is on Game Pass. Now the next game is one that a lot of people might look past, and it's Project Cars 2. Now this game is arguably the peak of the Project Cars series, with Project Cars 3 unfortunately not really reaching the same heights as Project Cars 2. Now this game is probably the most unforgiving simulator on the list. It's fairly difficult to get used to playing with a controller, but once you get confident with the controls, it's really rewarding, and it's a great stepping stone onto more hardcore simulators like iRacing or Assetto Corsa. This game has a really good list of tracks and cars to choose from, and despite being a few years old, the graphics are second to none. Especially if you want to use VR, as the VR support in this game is fantastic. If you are going to use a controller on Project Cars 2, I recommend using these controller settings as a baseline, and then adjusting them as you go to your preference. Okay, so if rally games are your thing, there are two games that I'd recommend to choose from. The first being Dirt Rally 2.0. Now this game is probably one of the most unforgiving rally games that are out there on the market, and it is fairly difficult to play on controller, but definitely not impossible, and actually some of the quickest drivers in Dirt Rally 2.0 are playing on controller. The second rally game that I'd recommend is EA Sports WRC. Now, having come out far more recently than Dirt Rally 2.0, some aspects of this game are going to be more updated. For example, this game includes more up-to-date WRC cars and tracks. However, I'd say that visually this game isn't particularly different from Dirt Rally 2.0, so if graphics are something you're really looking for, then that may sway your decision. Personally, I would say that I prefer the controller gameplay on EA Sports WRC. It's very slightly more forgiving than Dirt Rally and feels a little bit closer to the old Dirt 3 style of racing, which is a bit more forgiving and controllable on controller. EA Sports WRC is more expensive given that it came out far more recently, so if price is something that will affect your decision, then that is definitely something to take into consideration. The final game I'm going to recommend is Forza Motorsport. Now, if you're familiar with this channel, you would have been expecting this one. Now, Forza Motorsport is definitely not without its issues. There are quite a few bugs and things, especially on PC. The online racing can be a bit difficult with the penalty system not being great and other drivers generally being a little bit dirty. However, overall, I think this is probably the best sim racing game if you want to play against other people online and you're on a controller. Despite some of the issues that I've just said about the online racing, actually this game can provide some incredible races against other players, and the feeling of getting a really good race online is second to none. Now, I really wouldn't recommend Forza Motorsport if you're only going to be playing single player. There are definitely better options like Project Cars 2 for single player racing games. The AI in this game is not particularly well developed and doesn't really give much of a challenge, so I would only really recommend this game if you're going to play online. Forza Motorsport is also free on Game Pass. So there you have it, there's my list of the best controller racing games that are out in 2024. I hope you found this list helpful. If so, please do let me know in the comments. I really appreciate all the support and feedback that I get from you guys. And if you're new to the channel, then please do stick around and check out some of the other videos. There's going to be some exciting videos coming out soon, so keep an eye out for them. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I hope to see you again soon.